Alrighty, so I wanted to stop in real quick just to let you guys know that I was on the Poorly Made Police Memes podcast once again. It's episode 61. It's all BS. And the topic for this podcast, he did something a little bit different this time. He had myself and a guy named Bob on, and Bob is a lawyer. So the three of us talked about a couple of police-involved shootings that were actually justified shootings, justified uses of force, where the suspects had firearms, the police ended up shooting and killing these guys, and it was all out of violent circumstances. But for some reason, the municipalities or the cities or whoever it was had to pay out a civil, what do you call that? They agreed to a civil payout. The one was $3 million, and it was a shooting out of Colorado Springs. The other one hasn't yet paid out, but there was some hanky stuff that was found by like the Civilian Review Board or something like that. So we had a discussion about those shootings and what we think about these payouts and why cities pay out for good shootings. It was a pretty good discussion, pretty good topic idea, if you ask me. And it was pretty cool of Larry the Meme Lord to put this together. I also want to let you know that I'm going to be somewhat of a regular guest on his podcast because when we work pretty well together. I think we both kind of agree to that. And he asked if I'd be interested in being a regular guest. And I said, heck yeah, I would. It should benefit us both, because I have an audience on YouTube and he has an audience on Facebook and through the podcast. Hopefully we can get to a situation where we're seeing benefits for both of us with this relationship. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. First, let me know what you think about the podcast. And then also, I'm curious if you guys are the type of people who listen to podcasts or if you spend all of your time getting your entertainment through YouTube. And I'm going to float an idea, which Larry might get mad at me for saying this, but I want to float the idea of possibly taking parts of the podcast that are already put together like this and putting them in YouTube format so we can put them out so that if you don't want to watch or listen to an entire 2 or 3 hour podcast, maybe you might watch or listen to a 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute segment of the conversations. So let me know what you guys think about that. And let me know if you think it would work with just kind of the meme in the background with the audio, if you guys would be interested in listening to something like that, or if you think it's vitally important that we have our faces up here, because that adds a whole nother element as far as recording and editing and all that kind of stuff. So we're curious what you guys think about the podcast and if you have any ideas and suggestions going forward. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and play a segment from the one that we recorded last night, just to give you guys a little taste. And I'm going to encourage you to go over to wherever you listen to podcasts and check him out if you haven't already. One of the cool things that he does is through his network that he has established, like through Facebook. He obviously has a lot of police officers that follow him, and he's kind of just having regular old police officers call in, and he does 2 episodes a week, and those episodes are generally new officers that he's never met before, never spoken to, other than a couple of brief messages. And you get to hear about these officers' perspectives, and they have a variety of backgrounds. He's had guys that are long-term narcotics guys. He's had guys from different states. He's had California, Virginia, East Coast guys. He's had a guy from Canada on the podcast. He had an English. I don't know if he considers himself English or British. Probably British is probably the right way to say it. A lot of variety, and you get to hear a lot of perspective from a lot of different officers, and it's a pretty cool thing. So give this video a view, and then go check out his podcast. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this format, and just any suggestions you have or ways that we can get the content to you in a way that you're most likely to watch or listen, whatever. So with all that being said, I'm going to get out of the way and let you guys give it a listen. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, and and I lived in Colorado at the time, and the big thing when that first came out is the body camera wasn't available, and it was just like somebody's Nest camera or whatever, and it caught it, and it basically looked like, oh, they just shot him in the back when he was running away, which on the body camera is very clear that he's reaching for his waistband. And to kind of build on what you guys are saying, I don't believe the police should wait to find out if the guy is going to point the gun at you or not. That's fucking ridiculous.
No, it's literally something that would train on. And there was just so many danger cues in that situation that people who aren't police officers aren't aware of or wouldn't necessarily pick up on. And that's the reason that those people tend to get shot more in those situations. In fact, I mean, maybe that's not the most appropriate way to say it, but it is. There was a ton of danger cues there, and the officer was correct. And then I want to talk about somebody that's fleeing with a firearm that turns around and shoots. There's this misconception that, and I even addressed it I addressed it in an op-ed that I responded to online. But this woman said that someone who has their back to you and is running from you is not a threat, and they don't deserve any use of force. Well, I have a buddy who walks with a limp because he lost like a quarter inch of his femur because somebody that he was chasing just blindly reached back with a gun, popped off a round, and smashed his femur, leaving him collapsed on the ground, vulnerable for anything else that might happen. I'm pretty sure that he would disagree that someone running away is not a threat. And who knows, like 2 seconds later, this kid could have been firing on the officers.
Oh, absolutely. And Force Science really does a great job of explaining this stuff. And I wish they were more on the forefront of all this stuff. I wish when police departments, and I will give Colorado Springs credit, at least in my knowledge. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but the Springs police have pretty much said since the onset, like, this was good. There was not an issue with this at all. And even the mayor, and Bob, correct me, but he was the attorney general for the state of Colorado for a while, right? John Struthers?
Yes.
Even the mayor was like, hey, the cops did nothing wrong, kind of deal. In my opinion, being a cop in Colorado, there was no issue with that, right? That's exactly what we're trained to do. You have a right to defend yourself. He's a fleeing felon, all that good stuff. Now, the other part of this, and I don't like to convict somebody essentially before they're convicted. This guy was on El Paso County's most wanted before the shooting for a sex assault for a person in a position of trust. That's a pretty bad deal. And I've read some of the details on that, and it was fucked up. You don't find that shit. Like, if you search that dude's name in a shooting, it's not there. You have to dig, or the fact that the gun that he had on him was stolen. You don't fucking hear that shit. And what gets frustrating for me is, and it's going to kind of tie into everything we're going to talk about on this podcast, is there's just information is hidden from you. Like, we never get the full picture of what happens. And I don't think the public, even the public that maybe thinks the cops are wrong, they're not getting the full information. And I feel like the news media is deceitful on purpose. Am I off base?
I think you're 100% on. And one of the reasons that when I was looking at this, the articles that I chose to read about this subject more on were from NPR, because NPR is one of those organizations that will routinely frame stuff in a way that they will leave out key details and very carefully pick the words they use to describe the situation to, in your mind's eye, it paints a different picture. And it's now there's even stuff like you just mentioned. I didn't realize he had a stolen firearm on him. I didn't realize he had a warrant for some kind of sexual assault or whatever that crime was. They do that, and it's similar to what they did with Michael Brown and stuff too. It made it sound like the officer just picked him as some random guy and then just executed him when he was on his knees, which clearly isn't what happened. And these stories keep repeating themselves, and they're making martyrs out of people that shouldn't be martyrs. Like, there should be a consensus that, hey, you know what? This isn't the guy we're going to stand up for. Like, we deal with that as police officers. Like, I don't think anybody in the country, well, there were some, but it was very rare and few and far between, that were standing behind Derek Chauvin. Nobody was saying, oh, you know what? He's being unfairly treated, like blah, blah, blah. No, everyone was like, oh man, he fucked up. Like he fucked up bad. I think everybody was in agreement with that. And these stories are the complete opposite. It's unfortunate.
Bob, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm glad you brought up Chauvin, because I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind, right? And nobody, same thing. I didn't talk to a single cop who said what happened there was justified. And when all that stuff was popping off, my thought was, what are we doing? Everybody agrees that was not the right way to handle that situation. Nobody's trained to do that. Nobody's disagreeing that that was bad. Why are we burning shit down? But I think the primary issue we have is that nobody wants to let all the facts out. It permeates every aspect of our society, right? Making a Murderer, that quote unquote documentary, they left a bunch of stuff out because they were making an argument and it was fairly one-sided. There's a whole lot of issues with that, but they were trying to make a point. All these cop shootings are the same way. When the Chauvin incident came out, I remember thinking to myself, I'm tired of news media sanitizing facts and telling people what to believe based on what sells or what is the flavor of the month issue that carries the day. Right now, it's anything bad cop sells, right? So that's what they want to promote. But I remember when that snippet first came out, I spent a lot of time online looking because I'm like, why were they on the ground in the first place? I don't think you're going to get to a point where his behavior, being Chauvin's, was justified in any way. But show us the entire video and let us make that decision for ourselves. Why are you only showing the period starting from a certain point? Show the whole thing.